Mecca, a prominent Arabian town 570 years after the death of Jesus. A baby will be born here, and that baby will grow into a boy in the deserts and towns of Arabia. And that boy will grow into a man that will be spoken to by angels, leading him over the course of his life to become the founder and father of the world's second largest religion. From a small cave up in the mountains into the hearts and minds of people all over the world, his words will spread. Some believe him to be a prophet of God, sent here to put humanity back on the right paths. Others believe him to be a blasphemer, a false prophet. That man's name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abd al-Muttalib ibn Hashim, and he was the man who founded the religion of Islam. Hello everyone, I'm just going to do a quick little disclaimer here, or whatever you want to call it. I myself am not a Muslim, so I hope I don't offend anybody or get anything, too wrong here. I just find history very interesting, and especially individuals in history who had major impacts not only on the times that they lived in, but so much so that we can still see or feel the impact of the lives they lived hundreds of years after, sometimes even thousands after they've passed. Very, very few people in history can be said to have had that level of influence, and the man that we will talk about today is one of them. Also, I'm going to focus on the historical facts of his life, and not so much the theological or mythical aspects. But before we get to the life of Muhammad, let's set the scene a little bit here. Arabia in the 600s AD was dotted with towns and villages all across the desert landscape, and there were also various nomadic tribes that would consistently travel from place to place, looking for water and caravans to raid, or to the different oases around the desert. And this is how life was there for a very, very long time. One of the more prominent towns in Arabia, Mecca, was an important trading center and a religious place that many of the different tribes all used and held respect for. The Kaaba, an ancient site of significance to many different groups, believed by some to be founded by Abraham himself, was actually housed in Mecca. This site was important to people long, long before the emergence of Islam, and for hundreds, possibly thousands of years before Muhammad's time, people had been making pilgrimages to this site to worship and sacrifice to their various deities and their idols, which, before the times of Muhammad, would have decorated the interior and exterior of the Kaaba. Inside the Kaaba, apparently, again, before these items were said to have been destroyed on Muhammad's orders, were various idols of different tribes and gods, and pictures of figures like Abraham and Jesus. Also, the black stone that is said to be from the times of Adam and Eve, which still sits in the Kaaba today, and apparently the ram's horns that came from the ram that Abraham sacrificed instead of his son way back when, if you are inclined to believe in those stories. The Kaaba there is just that black structure right in the center there that everyone but is congregating around. I believe that you can actually go inside of it as well. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that the black rectangular shape there, that's the actual Kaaba. And that spot right there, where it is, apparently it's been there for thousands and thousands of years, before any of the religions that exist today were even created, So I found it still very interesting that somehow, some way, that place has been, significant place for human beings for a very, very long time. And some of you might find this little fact cool. In 2009, a Sedanius fossil, I hope I pronounced that properly, was found right near Mecca. And a Sedanius is believed to have been a primate that lived in the Oligocene epoch that lasted from about 33 million years ago to around 23 million years. So it seems to be that this geographical area here has played a pretty significant role in the lives of our most distant ancestors. I mean, before we even were human, all the way up until this very day. Millions and millions of years of stories, which, sadly, will never be known. Anyways, back on track here. The Quraysh tribe, the tribe that Muhammad will be born into, were an old and very established tribe in the region. It's believed that the founder of the tribe was Hira ibn Malik, who is said to have defended the Kaaba against an attack from a Yemen king when he wanted to try and take the Kaaba back to Yemen. Which, I don't know, I guess he wanted to take the structure back? I couldn't really find that out, but 6 generations after Fear, a man named Qusay ibn Kilad, this is the man the tribe gets its name from, he is said to have united all the descendants of Fear and conquered the Kaaba and the surrounding area, taking control of it for the Quraysh tribe. He then split up the tribe into different clans like the Quraysh al-Bata, the Quraysh of the Hollow, or the Quraysh al-Zawahir, the Quraysh of the outskirts, and also delegated special roles to his sons like the keeper of the Qurayshi war banner or supervisor of water and provisions for the pilgrims visiting the Kaaba. And it's believed by most historians that at this time, Mecca wasn't really a large trading center yet, and that the men of the Quraysh tribe, they weren't yet traders themselves either, but they made most of their wealth off the religious services that they provided and the taxes that they collected off the visitors to the Kaaba. So, by the time Muhammad is born, the Quraysh are a very large and dominant tribe that have controlled Mecca and the Kaaba for a long, long time, and they pretty much controlled all of the trading caravans and dominated commerce in their little geographical area there. They arranged caravans to travel all the way to Damascus and Gaza in the summertime, and then all the way to Yemen in the wintertime. And it was said about the Quraysh that they were known for their hilm, their absence of hot-headedness. Because, despite their rivalries, they would put commercial interests and unity over everything. And now, we get to the main character. Hopefully, I set the scene decently enough for you. We've got a desert town controlled by a large tribe made up of various clans, where not only is there a trading center, but also one of, if not the most religious sites in all of Arabia at the time, where various tribes who believe in various deities come to pay homage to their gods and to trade with their neighbors. It was into this world, in the year 570 AD, in the month of Rabi al-Awwal, which is springtime, Muhammad was born, into the Banu Hashim clan, which is said to have been one of the more affluent and distinguished families in the city of Mecca at the time. Sadly, though, for Muhammad, his father Abdullah died before he was born, and when he was born, he was sent to live with a Bedouin tribe out in the desert, because back then, at this time, it was believed that growing up in the desert and having a desert life was healthier for children. Now, some historians, they reject this historical record and say that this never happened, but it's not unlikely that he spent some time traveling the deserts as a young boy, or, even as a baby. It's actually quite interesting. The woman who is said to have taken care of Muhammad for the first 2 years of his life was named Halima bint Abi al-Sadiya, sorry. And she came from the tribe of Banu Sa'id. The women of the Banu Sa'id were foster mothers for the children of Mecca. They would take the children for the first few years of their lives and take them out into the desert to learn more traditional Arabic ways of living. Basically, like learning the way of your elders. And the women and families of Mecca would pay these foster mothers to take care of their kids. And the story goes that one day, the women of the Banu Sa'id all came to Mecca to gather up their foster kids. But none of the women wanted to take Muhammad because his father was dead, and they were worried that they wouldn't get paid. But Halima, feeling sad for the young orphan boy, took him in. Decades later, after Muhammad had become the leader of this new group of people calling themselves the Muslims, she actually went to Muhammad in Mecca and pledged her allegiance and faith to him as her prophet. At the age of 6, Muhammad lost his biological mother, whose name was Amina, and then he spent some time under the care of his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, and when he passed away, he was finally given over to his uncle on his father's side, Abu Talib. And for his teenage years, and while growing into a young man, he spent his time as a traveling merchant, traveling with caravans to various places around Arabia, which garnered him the attention of a woman named Khadija. Now, Khadija was an older, very wealthy merchant on her own accord. It's said that when the Quraysh tribe gathered their caravans together for the summer and winter journeys, that the caravans of Khadija was just as big as all the Qurayshi clans put together, so she was making money. And it's actually thought that she didn't really actually believe in or worship any of the idols at the time, which was pretty, uncommon for someone back then. It was in 595 BC, when Muhammad was around 25 years old, it says, and Khadija was 40, that she hired him to lead one of her caravans to Syria. So Muhammad and one of Khadija's household servants led the caravan to Syria, and this is where Muhammad earns his nicknames like al-Sadiq or al-Amin, meaning the honest one or the truthful one. And when the caravan got back to Khadija's, her servant told her about how Muhammad had handled himself super well, and he was a very good businessman, he was very professional, and he had actually brought back double the amount Khadija had been expecting. So the story goes that Khadija got one of her friends to approach Muhammad and to ask him what his feelings on marriage were. But Muhammad, who didn't really have enough money to support a wife at the time, he seemed a little bit hesitant to give an answer until the friend asked him, what if it was a woman who had the means to take care of herself? And with this, Muhammad seemed a little bit more agreeing, and he then agreed to meet up with Khadija and talk. And after their talk, they both went to their respective uncles and asked them for their opinions. And both uncles were happy with the arrangement, so Muhammad made his way to Khadija and formally proposed to her. And of course, she accepted. And when all was said and done, Muhammad moved in with her. Now we move into the year 605. This is 10 years after the marriage of Khadija, and sadly, after the couple have had a baby boy die in childhood on them. Hashim bin Muhammad, he died in 601. It's said that he passed before he could complete his milking age, and his brother, Abdullah ibn Muhammad, is born after this, but sadly again, he will pass in the year 611, though Muhammad's 4 daughters will survive childhood. And now, as I was saying, 10 years after this marriage, Muhammad is in Mecca when the people of the town decide that they wanted to put a roof on the Kaaba, which they would have to demolish the old structure that stood there and build a new one that could actually hold the weight of the new roof. This apparently scared the people of Mecca because they thought that the various gods who were housed in the Kaaba would be mad at them for destroying their home. But luckily for them, the night passed with no troubles, and the next day, the walls and the roof were built. And the new Kaaba was ready to go, except for one thing. The black stone had to be placed back into its spot, and the various clans began to argue at who should get to be able to do this honor. But no progress was made on a decision, so the men gathered there decided that the next person that were to enter the Kaaba would be the one to decide who put the stone back into place. And of course, in walks Muhammad. And he takes a look at the situation, and then he asks for cloth to be brought to him. He then placed the stone in the middle of the cloth and told the various clan leaders gathered all around to grab an edge of the cloth and lift the stone. So they did, and then the group carried the stone over to the Kaaba, where Muhammad himself picked up the stone and placed the stone back into its corner spot. Now, this right here just shows how Muhammad was able to arbitrate disputes and how he had the ability to mediate for both sides of an argument and have them both leave the argument feeling like they got what they wanted, But to me, that also shows Muhammad taking the initiative by placing the stone himself. Like, yes, you can all argue about who's going to put it back, but myself, I'll allow you to carry it for me. And then I will perform the final act of actually placing it. Kind of like giving him the authority over everyone. Now, sometime after Muhammad placed the stone in the Kaaba, that he began to go up into the mountains, specifically the mountain Jabal al-Nur, and he would spend hours and hours there, alone in isolation, inside the Hira cave, and he did this for several weeks a year. And according to Islamic tradition, it was in the year 610, at the age of 40, that one night, while sitting alone in the cave, meditating, the angel Gabriel appeared to him and showed him a cloth with verses from the Quran, the future holy book of the Muslims. But Muhammad couldn't read, so Gabriel choked his ass and told him to read it again. But Muhammad just said again, I can't read. And again, the angel is said to have just choked him again, just nearly to death. And apparently, this happened 3 times before Gabriel was like, okay, fine. I'll read them out loud, but you gotta remember them, okay? Or I will choke you out for real. Like, damn, dude, fucking, why wouldn't you just fucking choose somebody else who could read, or just, like, say it aloud from the beginning? There's no need to go scaring the guy and choking him out for not being able to read. Fucking kind of mean. Now, Muhammad, he didn't tell people right away about his visits from the angel, but he did discuss it with his wife Khadija and some closer family members. It was actually Khadija that was his first follower and believed that, yes, he was the messenger of a god, along with Abu Bakr and Zayd ibn al-Kabir. These people were the first followers of Muhammad, and therefore the first Muslims. And from these 3 followers, the religion of Islam will expand and then explode onto the world stage in the centuries to come. In part 2, we're going to look at the beginning of the actual religion of Islam and how Muhammad and a small group of followers grew into a dominant force in Mecca and then all of Arabia. I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of Muhammad's life, and have a good one.